Hey everyone, welcome to the Underswell. I'm Derek Sabori. Thanks for being here. Three, two, one. Our countdown is done. We're live. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm really excited. I was just looking today sort of at how we connected. Somebody had recommended you saying, hey, you should reach out to Rachel.
Yes, a good friend and colleague, Caitlin.
Yeah, so I hit her up today just saying, hey, thanks again for the recommendation. It's been really fun getting to know you and getting to hear your story, and I'm excited to share it with everybody today. So I guess it's Friday. Are you ready for the weekend?
I'm ready for the weekend.
You were in the ocean this morning, so are you going to be...
in the ocean this morning. It's a weekend to get in the ocean, late August, Southern California. It's like magical ocean recipe.
Best time. I feel like summer's finally just kicking in for us, maybe here down on the coast.
Yes, just the Indian summer, as they say.
Well, best time, if you're in Southern California, best time of the year is September, October, in my humble opinion. So
I will second that.
There we go. Well, I am here today with Rachel Heussenstamm, founder at Super Good Vibes and creative professional extraordinaire, who for years has excelled in creative direction, creative strategy, marketing strategy, media strategy, management of teams, managing of budgets. Anything else? I mean, you've got such extensive experience in advertising, branded content, commercials, broadcast, radio, all of that. What am I leaving out? Does that kind of sum it up?
That sums it up. And you know what, Derek, it's kind of funny because we can like say all the titles and all the things, but I actually think what my role has become, you know, it used to be more individual contributor, creator, and then it was team leader. And what it really has become recently in the consulting work and even in the leadership, team leadership work, it's basically translating business strategy into marketing and creative strategy, and almost being like sometimes I'm like, my role is really translator and clarifier, you know, what are we doing and why, and help making sure everyone understands each other. So all the title, you know, it is idea leadership. It is making sure we're strategically on point. It's all those things. It's looking at the analytics and making sure the creative team understands the analytics. But say often it's just like, it's problem solver and translator and pusher.
And clarifier, as you said.
Clarifier, yeah.
I love that. It's really I love the way you simplified it, and just whatever the phrase was of translating X to Y. Yeah. It's so powerful.
Like business strategy to creative strategy. I think, you know, so many of the world problems I feel like are two different teams from two different disciplines coming together because we need all those skill sets to solve a problem. And they just don't speak the same language,
and
right?
They need a bridge. You're the bridge.
We need to be bridging, and not only is it the bridge, but it's also like skills to bridge, clarifying skills, and just, you know, keep communicating, and having just the self-awareness to be like, oh, they might actually be talking about something else, or they don't actually understand us right now.
Yeah. Really powerful and important, I think, soft skills to have, so important. And I think we can unpack that and dive into that as we talk. But I want to start with this. In addition to that, you're also a climate-based fellow. So maybe Tell me a little bit about that. What does that entail? We'll dive deeper into it, but give me the highlights on that.
Yeah, so I did the climate-based curriculum a few years ago. I had it was in a little bit of a transition, and I really had for a long time been meaning to just make sure I was more educated there. I think I was pretty well read and wanted to just be more confident in A, my network, and B, my understanding of the issues. So I did the climate-based curriculum, which is, you know, you power through, I think it's a 12-week program where there's a bunch of reading. There's also a big entrepreneurial part of it where people are doing capstone projects and fellows are collaborating on those. So I got to jump in with a couple of those. And then I also just started internally a fellow-led group on finance, basically, or economics, because we don't talk about the money enough, I think, in any of these challenges. So it was basically an opportunity to continue to talk about the money. So I still lead that group today. You know, even though my academic part of the fellowship is over, I'm still engaged with the additional cohorts and stuff. And it's really great to see the ideas, the enthusiasm, all the problem solving that happens. And then, I feel like if I have a role at the moment, it's just to remind people that this money piece is sometimes the dead end that we need to just be more aware of when we start.
Yeah. Since you've been through the program and as you're still involved in it now, I guess how does it apply to just the work that you do outside of that? Do you see that, that climate work, that climate knowledge and education as you work with other clients and brands, do you see, is there a bridge there that still needs to be built, or?
Yeah, there's a bridge there. I think, over the years, I've always seen opportunities to do something organically that makes sense for a brand. And then now I think I'm just more confident in how to make those opportunities come to life when I see them in the future. If I'm in like a more normal corporate environment, or, in a non-climate sector, which I actually believe every sector is a climate sector right now.
Yeah.
If you think of it. So I love that about the program. That's from just like a community. Like I know the professionals. I know kind of their skill sets of who I could call and reach out to. And then I also just am more confident in being able to identify the opportunities, and then, identify when it's maybe BS or not an opportunity. So that's like the practical professional way. And then in my volunteer work, it's just totally changed how I approach volunteer work. So that's been pretty cool too.
Well, I love that you brought up confidence. I mean, I've got, you and I talked about it. I've got my School of Understanding, which is a sustainability education course. And that's the language I use. Like, I really want to help people be competent and confident, right? So you get the knowledge, and now you can go back, you can go out into the, into your workplace or working among stakeholders just with that confidence of like, hey, I know what I'm talking about now. And now I can apply it to, a solution maybe that you're looking for. So that's all keeping you busy, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your personal life real quickly. What else is keeping you busy these days?
I get in the ocean, walking the dog. I just try to get outside. We have so much screen time, which is such a powerful tool. But my personal life is really like, let's balance that. And then the volunteer work. I'm kind of working locally, trying to get more grounded in, so much of our professional life mine right now is Zoom meetings and virtual and email and building decks. It's just in the tunnel of the computer. So I'm trying to just get more in touch with the local community in my personal time, spend time in the community however I can, spend time with family. So just kind of balance out the virtual world with the real world. I think it's so important to do that for mental health, for just reality checks.
For sure.
Yeah.
And the volunteer work that you're doing, is that typically kind of hyper local, just like right in the community? Is that what?
Yeah, at the moment I've kind of pivoted to that and trying to do a little bit more of that, just to be more grounded in the community local. So that was like a conscious decision I've made more recently, and I am really enjoying that. Yeah.
Well, we mentioned this just a minute ago, but not long ago when I put out that call for guests with interesting, inspiring career stories, people who had, or looking for people who have had an impact on others and or in their industries. You were nominated by Caitlin, as we said, and here we are. So I guess I want to know. Obviously, she thought highly of you. You immediately came to mind. So maybe when others look at the work that you've done or the work that you do or the kind of person you are, what do they see? Because I've seen people mention that you're a great mentor, but what can we expect from your story and your experience?
Yeah, I think on the mentor front, I do believe in like servant leadership, where like part of your job as a leader is to enable your teams and enable other teams in the building, enable the whole business, right? So I do definitely believe in like a more servant leadership model. And I think most of my peers, they see me as a problem solver and see me as being super curious, which I would say is like a superpower, curiosity and I don't think it's just for this role, and people think of creative roles, sure, curious, but I think for any role you have in business, or even if you're not, even if you're in hospitality, or like even if you're in the sciences, like being curious is just such a important human skill.
I hear it. Oh, yeah, I hear it over and over from all my guests. I mean, it's the theme that just keeps coming up, right? Just be curious, ask questions, be curious, ask questions.
Is now a good time just to talk about what curiosity is? Because I feel like it's so kind of vague, right? Like,
yeah, let's drill in on it.
It's curiosity. So,
what does it mean to you?
Like, I feel like the muscles can start when you're a kid, or can start as an adult, as a professional, just even at the awareness. But I think as a kid, it's like this more organic discovery. It's like there's a spirit, right? So I think curiosity has a spirit element of just like, what's your mindset? What's your organic curiosity, which you can build like a muscle.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I think there's also just the ability to ask questions and go deeper. So like curious is like, it's like a depth thing, right? It's like who, what, when, where, why. It's like, how do you build context around this thing that you're seeing in front of you? And the reason why I think it's so important, and so that's like almost tactical. It's not, you're not thinking it tactical once you do it all the time. It's just happening in your brain, right?
Right.
Yeah, but so there's the spirit of it, and which is like wonder and discovery. There's the tactical of like who, what, when, where, why, established context, which I believe is important because it helps for problem solving skills, but what it really helps for is like identifying the problems. Right? And understanding the problems and also just identifying which ones are important. And so I think one of our best skills as humans is problem solvers and innovators.
Yeah.
In the creative world, that's like what you're doing, a version of that. And so I think curiosity, that's really where the depth comes from, right? And why it's so important. Like, why is it important to be curious? I'm like, because the curiosity leads to understanding, it leads to identifying issues, it leads to the skills to help problem solve issues.
Yeah. I love that you broke into just two camps, right? That one of like wonder and just sort of the spirit of it. And then the other side is more intentional, more tactical, more strategic. Yeah. I was listening to a Chris Voss interview where he's the negotiator, negotiating pro. And he said he used to call it like emotional empathy or something. And now he calls it tactical empathy, or using that word because then people are like, oh, well then it's not so like, mushy. It's like, that's really important. So either way, curiosity, yeah, if you're using it strategically, it's helping you get to the problem or the solution. I think
when you do understand context more, which will come from curiosity, you end up building context the more curious you are.
Yeah.
That's a perfect bridge to empathy, as if you just mentioned empathy. Because the more you understand, I think the more opportunity you have for real empathy.
Yeah.
That's also important. So curiosity just goes and it just keeps going. It adds to like all these other skills.
Well, I think I might be able to bridge this. Speaking of bridges to my next question, because you built such a killer, creative resume working with big brands and budgets like ZipRecruiter, ESPN, and others. I guess, is this the work that you always dreamed of doing? Maybe walk us through how you got here, because I think at one point, kind of like you're talking here, you were on the fence between the sciences and the arts. So let's take it back a little and what's the pathway here?
It's interesting. As a kid, I was never a kid who like was putting career stakes in the ground. Like, this is what I want to be when I grow up, or even like had those kinds of fantasies or visions of like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I don't know why that is. When I think about it now, it kind of seems kind of weird to, because I'm really good at putting the stakes in the ground in front of me. Like, okay, we're gonna swing at this pitch, we're gonna commit. Like, I'm good at committing. But I never had the like, oh, I'm going after this dream or this career. I was just always interested in things, and maybe interested in so many things. That's partly why. But I never felt like overwhelmed, with choice or something like that. It was just like, oh, I like all these things. I'm taking what I'm doing in front of me really serious. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I never went out and was like, I want to be in advertising. And I have so many peers who that was their vision, and their stories are just kind of as zigzaggy and interesting. And there's so many peers in advertising and the creative industries that found their way there just through passion for the arts, which is like kind of similar, to how I found my way here. But yeah, I was never going to be in advertising or even in business, like it was like,
so it's sort of, you sort of fell into it, or it was sort of accidentally intentional kind of thing?
I think one thing leads to another, right?
Yeah.
I think being interested in things, and I was a doer. I developed a really strong work ethic as a small kid because I was dyslexic. And I think that made, if you're the only kid in the room who can't read the book, there's some nerves there and there's some drive that I wanted to solve that. And so I learned how to work really hard, and it was hard. So I think I took that with me to all kinds of things. And then I was also surrounded by just a ton of art and entrepreneurialism.
In your family?
In my family and in the community I grew up in.
Okay.
Which was really, really lucky to have that. So I had the arts and creative endeavors and discipline and practice in those areas that just slowly led in. I was solving problems too. And so that led into the creative arts. But yeah, I was as interested in going to school to be a biologist as I was interested in going to school to study art or music or all the things that I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you've got those early challenges. You're dealing with dyslexia, some learning development issues that you're struggling through. It's turning you into a stronger person, knowing how to work around it.
Like, I couldn't read until I was 10.
Really?
Like the dyslexia was real, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, talk to me a little bit about that because what is it like then as you get into high school and you start making your way into college and not knowing which direction you want to go? I don't know. Tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I wasn't diagnosed as a kid.
Okay.
It was just something I discovered as a young adult. And so I was working really hard to work my way through high school even. And I think what happened is my comprehension became really, really high. But the way I was, the crutches or the hacks I was like, self-building in myself, it just made me slower. So like I was a slower reader. I was at this, but like I was one of the only couple kids that were consistently getting, 10 out of 10 on the reading pop quiz, right?
Yeah.
So the comprehension was high, but the pace was slow. And I was doing tons of things. Like I was in band, so I was sight reading music. That's fast, right? You're like, that's in time. That's like in this fourth dimension of time. You can't miss the sight reading. So there were tons of things that were like pressuring and pushing me to push through the disability, if we want to call it, I don't know what we call it these days, but push through the learning challenges.
Yep.
And so I think that was unique. And I think dyslexia also, you discover patterns, which I think gave me a level of like metacognition where I started to understand and see things even in myself and my own learning in other systems. So these were like strengths that were coming. And I've totally lost track of where you started with this question.
Well, I guess I'm just kind of trying to walk through it, right? So you start to overcome that. Obviously, you get to a point where you can read. Your comprehension is really good. But you make a decision. You're growing up in an artistic family, in a community. You grew up in Laguna Beach, a heavy arts kind of community and environment, coastal, beautiful. So you were surrounded by nature and art.
Environmentally spoiled.
Yeah, exactly. But you decide to go off to college. Let's talk about that because I know you go off to USC and you make a decision to go into the city.
So I go into the city, and part of the reason why I chose USC was because of proximity to home, and it was also because it was a good school. Like there was pressure to go to the best school that I got into, right? And it seemed like it was a solid school. It was close to home. I got some financial aid, and some of the other schools I got into were further away, and it was a little bit vague. And it was interesting. I wish at that time I had more advice and counseling on like picking a school that was more of a cultural fit for my personality and stuff. There was counseling and stuff like that, but no one was like, oh, this, I also got into UC Santa Cruz. Part of me is like, oh, my life would have been totally different if I had gone back and chosen to go to UC Santa Cruz. And maybe it would have been more authentic to me. Like I would have found purpose sooner. I would have found all these things. I don't dwell too much on the past, but I think it's interesting to look at and what if, just to the extent of like you learn a little bit about yourself, right?
Yeah.
But I try not to like spend too much energy there. So yeah, I went to USC. I was studying music in the music school. I was a decent musician. I wasn't a phenomenal musician. I wasn't a performance major. I was a music major.
Okay. So you start off as a music major, but you had been a musician as a child too, though younger, right?
Yeah. My dad's a professional musician, so I joke around like if your dad speaks Spanish, you learn Spanish. Like it was like my dad spoke music. He's a little savantish in that way, and if I think about it really hard, I don't think anyone in my extended family like had a real job. Like a real job, I just mean that's like had like a normal standard job that you'd think of like a
9 to 5.
Everyone was in the arts or an entrepreneur or something like that. There were a couple of educators, a couple university educators, but really everyone was an entrepreneur or an artist. So that was like there was a lot of loose framework.
Which may have made it tough as you go into USC. Are you deciding you're a music major, but you're like, what do I really want to do? I'm not even sure.
That first year, I ended up finishing a student down the hall's architecture projects like every night. I was like obsessed with his art. And so I actually transferred to architecture major my second year.
Okay.
And I kept the music classes. I might have been like trying to do both there for a minute. I was really good at just being like, I'm taking all these creative classes and I'm not taking necessarily all the GEs I need to be taking, which was a magical experience because I got to take music theory and color theory at the same time. Yeah. I got to juxtapose all these things that you normally wouldn't get to do.
Interesting.
And I think it created like just another level of understanding and awareness of like, oh, the arts and how things work. And it also connected the arts to the science, of it, which I was already interested in.
Yeah. So what do you end up finishing with? Because do you stay at USC?
I end up dropping out to be in a band. I'm moving to Nashville.
There we go. So now you
don't tell anyone.
This is just between us. Don't worry.
This is just between us.
But so you decide, you're like, listen, none of this is for me. I'm going to go be a musician. I'm going to follow in my dad's footsteps.
It wasn't even that conscious of a decision. And this is when people are stressing out about their progress in their career or something, I'm like, so many things can happen at any moment if you're open, right, to what can happen, and you're willing to lean in and kind of just enter the unknown. I mean, if you have a real goal, obviously experiment with that goal. Yeah. But if you don't, like, I think just being the curious and going. So like, I was invited to move to Nashville for like a conceptual project. Capitol Records was paying for the plane ticket. You're 20 and a record label's going to pay for a plane ticket. You're like, yes, please. I think this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, right? Exactly. This is the universe.
It might have been 30. I might have been like, oh no, don't do that.
Yeah. But how exciting though. What a great opportunity.
Yeah. So it was just like kind of like this right-hand turn. I dropped out of school. I ended up picking up night classes in Nashville because I had this feeling that I was going to go back to school maybe for architecture, and I would want to finish my undergraduate so I could go to graduate school for architecture and not come back in as an undergraduate whenever my music escapade was going to end or not end.
Yeah.
I have dear friends who are musicians and they like can't breathe without music. Yeah. Without that practice. And I love music. It's a high. It's like such a great buzz. It's so fun. It's a great way to connect with people on so many different levels, and it's just a buzz, right? It was a blast, but I didn't have that like I need it, which I could see in like family members, I could see in friends, I could see that really closely. So I think because of that, maybe subconsciously I always knew like I was going to wander from this, and I didn't think I was that great, right? I like being good at things. I like kicking push. Yeah.
What did you play? What was your role?
I played bass.
You're a bass player. Okay, so you decide, you're like, I've got maybe
I'm still doing it. I'm still having a blast. But I was like starting to put together backup plans. I paid my, that project ended and whatever, and then I was in Nashville, Tennessee, right? I was like a California beach kid in Nashville. I don't want to use the word displaced because displaced has real meaning that of hardship, but I was in a way just like out of my element there. Yeah. And I think that was really good for me to be like, one of my brothers has been getting his master's in education, and he's been talking about this term, cultural capital, which is like where, your culture and your influence, like it could be your family, your society, your education, your community really influences you. And it's like, it's a skill set that helps you connect with people. There's negative sides of it because it gets like, it's like cannot be inclusive, some of the benefits from cultural capital. But I think having diversity of experiences just diversifies your cultural capital in a way. And so Nashville was like that. Now I was in the South. I was a vegetarian. Like it was like,
people are like, wait, what?
All the things, right? I was learning so much just culturally. And I also, you start to understand people and build empathy for just different life experiences. So it was really a positive experience to be in Nashville.
And all of this, I'm sure, continues to inform who you become and the work that you do and the way you work.
Well, I'm paying my way after that project ends by doing graphic design.
Ah, okay.
So even though I'm I'm in the music community, I'm doing graphic design, and I'm doing all kinds of odds and end jobs kind of to make up for stuff.
Okay.
And so I quickly start you start to understand marketing, those kinds of things. Yeah. But I guess before that, at USC, I made my own job for me as a graphic designer. I needed work study, right? Which is a federal grant program. So I had to work like 20 hours a week as a student at USC. Yeah. And on the first day of it was the first week of school, there was an orientation for the music school, and the marketing director for the music school was just giving a chat about everything. And I was like, I'm going to make posters for this guy.
So you're a self-starter.
I decided. Yeah. So I walked up to him and I was like, I want to make posters for all the stuff that you got. And USC has just like an amazing program of like public concerts and everything. Mm-hmm. And that job experience, not only did I learn so many things about the craft of design, I also started to learn marketing things like, okay, we have multiple audiences. There's not just the student audience on campus we're making posters for. Now we're trying to promote these concerts to alumni, to the public community in Los Angeles, and like, do you talk to different audiences in different ways, or different audiences are interested in different events? And like, there was just muscle, that strategic muscle that I got in this just random work study job that I made for myself.
Yeah. I love you're also, I mean, I love that your brother talks about cultural capital. I think that's really great. I call it stacking clips. Like for my son's a skateboarder, right? He was a skateboarder. So for me, and I try to say in life, like you should always be stacking clips, which is this, like going and getting the little job, moving to Nashville, everything you do, you're just stacking those things to make a better, feature film or premiere, whatever it is. So you're right. But even this idea of getting these little bits of experience is so good and so strong, and I can see it kind of inching its way towards you diving off into the space that you're in now, right? Is there a moment when you kind of get your big break, or you realize like, hey, I'm off, this is where my career is headed? What's sort of that pivot moment like?
I guess if you want to do a big break moment, and so I had my first real, this is the preface, the big break job, but I landed my first real job as being an art designer and then art director for NSAI, which is a songwriting association that lobbies for intellectual property rights for songwriters. And so there's a lot of dense stuff there, and it's basically like almost like a songwriters union in a way. But they also produce the largest songwriting festival in the world. So I got to figure out how to, had learned so many things also in that job. But so I've been in that job for a while. My skill set level is up. I've like taken that event, massive event, 300 songwriters online, figured out how to help fans navigate a 300 songwriters schedule over nine venues, 5 days. Like, so I did a bunch of logistical information hierarchy learning there that just like, I had some good design muscle coming out of that job.
Yeah.
And so then I had gone back to freelancing for a bit, and through my music friends was introduced to an advertising leader who was starting his own agency in Nashville and had come out of New York and San Francisco and had all the traditional advertising chops. He was just a giant and brilliant at his job. And I did a little project with him because he needed some design help. And we clicked and hit it off. And the next thing you know, I'm like making commercials for ESPN in New York. Like, it's not the next thing, but it kind of, that's the break.
Yeah.
Right? That break comes from being introduced by music friends for a small tech project that was happening in Nashville. That I do a project with a collaborator that changes the course of my life. Like it's like that simple, I think.
I got two questions. One, it seems like that decision to go to Nashville to follow your sort of a musical opportunity, maybe a musical dream, is really the Kickstarter for your career, but in a different way, right? If you wouldn't have said yes to that opportunity, who knows what you would have been doing now, even though it's not music, right?
Right.
And then two, where did you get the skill set to go and work for then on an ESPN project, right? You're going from doing flyers and promoting. I guess you're helping the Songwriters Association.
Yeah, I've done like print design, web design. I've done all these, like all of the basic design stuff.
Self-taught?
Self-taught.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Self-taught, which is also, the peers that went to ad school and design school. Sometimes they like me, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
It's self-taught. And, I came in as a purist. Like, I took that work study job at USC, and I was like, I'm not going to make anything on the computer. Like, this is what a purist I was. I'm like, I'm just going to, I just come out of all these art classes in high school. I was going to be an illustrator. I was going to make these beautiful posters. And I did do that, but I also did a lot of scanning. And all of a sudden, when you need to make a lot of print text legible, the computers starts to get attractive. Yes. So I was open enough to be like, okay, I think of that in many ways I am a purist, but I'm adopting at the same time. And I think there's a beautiful tension that comes together there. So openness and willing to try new things, but also like kind of have this self-reflection to understand why you're a purist and try to keep those things with you.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of the self-taught thing of like, okay, I have some opinions and now I'm going to go test them out. Right. Yeah. So I did have the legit design chops. I mean, by this time I've done 10,000 hours in Photoshop and InDesign and like learned multiple software programs. I have aesthetic, and I've done the studying. I may not have been studying design, but I'm studying architecture. I'm studying music. I'm studying great art on a deeper level, just not contextually here.
That's right.
So it just wasn't in the exact discipline, but I'm learning all the stuff around it. Yeah. And so to jump to video, I was really lucky that I had that music discipline and the music background, because video is really like you're adding the dimension of time to like, and there's a skill to that. There's a skill to being in the edit and understanding the arc and the narrative and the structure. And because I had all that music's time and skill set in me, it was a really easy transition.
It almost came naturally.
It is. It kind of, yeah. You want to say it came naturally, but it's like, oh, I did a lot of homework.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. All along the way.
Along the way.
When we talk about kind of art and creativity, my guest last week, Steve Jones, he's also a creative professional, visual art, interior design. Now he does real estate development. But we spoke about the power of creativity and or design, and I want to ask the same question that I did to him, to you. When it comes to creativity, though, I wonder, sounds like for you, it's a mix. It's a learned skill, but also it's an innate one. And I guess if you're trying to explain it to others, how important is creativity in design if you're trying to talk about it to somebody else who just maybe is like, I don't know, how important is it? It just feels like, I think I know the answer here, but you tell me.
I mean, I think it's so important, but I don't think of creativity as being creativity. I think of it as problem solving and innovating, which I think I've heard lots of people, I think in my camp would say that.
Yeah, he did too.
It is, I mean, ideating, you could say creativity, and I think everyone is creative. I mean, we put together a sentence. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like everyone has some baseline creativity.
Oh, yeah,
and
totally.
that kind of just seems a little cliche, but I also understand, like, yeah, some people are innately more creative and have some advantages because of that, but I think it doesn't mean it can't be learned. I could maybe try to construct an argument against that, but then you see little kids who are clearly athletes,
Yes.
You're like, okay, maybe there is some truth where like it comes more natural. But I don't think that doesn't mean everyone's not creative. And creativity can take so many forms, and there's so many different types of problems to solve.
Yes. I love that you said in so many different forms, because even as you said athlete, I'm thinking, okay, young kids, as they get into team sports, they've got to be really creative on the court, on the field, right? As like the best playmakers become the most creative ones.
Yeah.
So you're right. I love that you said that.
And I think there's some roles that are more traditionally creative, right?
Mm-hmm.
In their skills in the arts and in design, and some roles that aren't. Some roles you're a tool for someone else's creativity.
Okay, yeah.
Right? In the design world. And sometimes you are the creator. And I think it's a great self-awareness, because I think oftentimes throughout a project, your role could change to being more the tool, less creative. And by the tool, you mean you're producing. It's a craft. You have to have your craft down. It's a skill.
Yeah.
But you're sometimes in those contexts less creative, in the traditional sense of the word. And you're helping someone execute their creativity.
Yeah.
And that is a collaboration, and there can be feedback, and there can be a dynamic there. One example is when you're working in editorial, you could show up with an editor that comes with a bunch of ideas, or you could show up with an editor that's just waiting for you to tell them exactly what to do. And in that sense, they're more of a tool, right? And I don't mean that it sounds kind of, I mean it in the best sense of the world, not in the skateboarding, like you're a tool, dude.
Right.
Tools are super important. And yeah, and I think it's good to know, sometimes in a meeting, my role can change to be in a meeting right now, I'm a translator, I'm a tool, right? That's my job, is to make sure. In other words, my thing is to push everyone forward and have an innovation project. This is in the same meeting. I have a really creative role, and I have a really non-creative role that's still kind of creative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's just so many different contexts, and to be self-aware of the context.
It's kind of like being in a band, though, right? I mean, sometimes you're going to be the creative one, even if you're a drummer, a bass player. It's sometimes you just got to hold the line, and other times you get to be the creative force out in the front, kind of. But we all got to come together and do what's right for the band.
And how you hold that line can be very soulful. It can be very mechanical. It can be, the way you decide to do that in itself is creativity, and is the vibe. Could be a vibe setter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
could totally change how the other person's going to be creative.
Yes.
Are we in a pink room, or are we in a yellow room? And that's technical tool stuff,
Huh.
right?
Yeah.
If you're going to hold the line of the pink room, it's a vibe.
So everybody can pick up on this, I guess, if you start to pay attention. You're self-taught, you self-learn. People can learn. I think you just have to pay attention to it. What about entrepreneurship? You're an entrepreneur. What have you got? How'd you get that? Is that innate, modeled, learned?
I think it can be innate. I think it can be modeled too. I would say my entrepreneurship comes from, if you want to use that word, cultural capital. It comes from a family of entrepreneurs. It comes from growing up in Laguna, where you just we're stacked with entrepreneurs as kids. It's kind of crazy when I think about my immediate family, but then also the community. I mean, we had the entire surf industry come through that town. It felt like as we were kids. You have Quicksilver there. You have Billabong. You have Volcom. You have just those innovators and entrepreneurs, they're all in Laguna at one point. Stussy, like it just is like it's kind of bonkers when you think about it.
That's right.
You have that, and then you have all the artists, right? They're entrepreneurs in themselves, and then you have a different kind of entrepreneur in Laguna too, where you have people that were entrepreneurs that turn into like Fortune 500 companies. Though they're in Laguna too. They're a little bit quieter, a little bit more, but those are your friends' parents also,
Yeah.
and they may not seem like entrepreneurs now because these are monolithic public companies, but at some point
They were at one point.
They were entrepreneurs, and that they had carry that spirit with them. So I think there was just this idea that you could kind of make or do anything just innately baked into our culture, where I feel like in a different town, you might not get that, those role models.
Yeah, I'm sure it was really influential. And I think it's so important for young people to see that and see that it's like, hey, my neighbors can do that. My friends can do it. My family and friends can do it. It can be done. So there's a pathway there for me.
And I've been thinking about that. Like the negative part of cultural capital is like you kind of inherit it.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking, if you become more aware of your social capital, you could be like, I want to surround myself with entrepreneurs. Where am I going to go? Do I have the means to go there? What can I do to change my surrounding, my environment to just have more of that influence if I've decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur? Like, can you make your own cultural capital? And I kind of think you can.
Absolutely. I think so too. Yeah. Well, you started to make it when you moved to Nashville. So you made a conscious decision.
Totally.
Right?
And sometimes that was not conscious, and I talk about this now, looking back on childhood in Laguna. At the time, I wasn't aware that we were surrounded by entrepreneurs. You're like in the Gatorade, drinking the Gatorade. Mm-hmm. But looking back on it, I can see. And as I get more and more self-awareness, more and more metacognition, you start to see the patterns. You start to ask why. I was curious, like, why am I so much more, have more courage or less, it was fear not blocking me in this moment. I don't believe in fearlessness. I think we all have fear. I think just some people can walk through it, or are more confident to walk through it, have more courage to walk through it. I don't want to glorify it either, right? But why in these situations is the fear holding me back less than my peer who is just as capable? And then you start to ask why, or understand, or just unpack your belief systems. And I think there's role modeling is a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, I want to take a quick break, Rachel. When we come back, I call this show the Underswell, really, because I believe that underneath, sort of all of our big moments, the things that we do, the resume that you've built, the career that you've built, there are these small things. And I think I'm starting to hear some of them. But I want to kind of get a sense of what's underneath the surface for you, what really drives you, what makes you tick. So when we come back, I'm going to ask you that, and then I want to ask for some advice that you've got for career builders. So hang tight. We'll come right back. Talking with professionals like my guest today is always inspiring, and a reminder that more of us need foundational sustainability knowledge so we can help our brands and companies continue to grow and profit in the most sustainable way. What do you think? Does your team have the confidence and competence to work in and contribute to this exciting space? I often find that the answer is, well, not yet. That's why, after more than a decade deep in the sustainability profession, I developed a set of courses and trainings to do just that. The School of Understanding is a self-paced online sustainability course made for professionals and brands who want to catch up and keep up with the expectations of today's marketplace. If you're not fluent in the language of sustainability yet, you're falling behind. So let's fix that. Enroll yourself or your team now and get caught up in the exciting opportunities that are being created in sustainable and profitable business. Rachel, right before the break, we were talking about cultural capital and being surrounded, how our environment really, I think, informs who we are, who we become, what we do, what we're willing to do. And I guess, for you, you've built, a really successful career. You built a great reputation in sort of the design creative space, doing commercial work, working with, big names and big brand assets, I guess, for lack of a better word. Maybe that's the wrong word. But I guess I want to know for you, what's underneath it all? What makes you tick? What drives you? I call it the underswell. I always believe there's a sort of undercurrent that drives us. What is your underswell? What drives you?
I mean, my straightest answer to that is I do think I have an addiction for problem solving. Like, it is definitely really fun. And I think that helps the work ethic not just steamroll you. It helps you work harder when you're having fun.
Yeah.
And smarter.
So you could have just as easily not been a musician or a creative, but an engineer, it sounds like.
Maybe, yeah. My dyslexia might have held me back a little bit in the beginning, but I might have figured out how to overcome that.
Yeah. I want to know, tell me about some standout moments you've had in your career. You've worked with some great people, some great brands and properties. Like I said, what's been a memorable highlight? What's been sort of a kind of peak moment for you so far?
You know what? There's a couple, but thinking about this podcast and how we're inspiring the job search journey and just career journey. ZipRecruiter is just notable because during that time, I got exposed to so many stories of people's job search and of people's career search and their journey. So it was a cool personal journey. I joined that team. We had a decent, but a small advertising spend. We scaled that spend massively over a 2-year period, got them ready for a direct listing, like an IPO. Mm-hmm. And, it's such an incredible journey to be part of that business arc, and to build a team, to have a team that just was kicking tush the whole time. Yeah. So as a leader, it was really fun. As a problem solver, it was really fun. And then also there was so much curiosity in people's stories and just learning about the journey, and also the challenges of the business owner and hiring too. So it was just such an insightful sector to be in. Actually, that's definitely a career highlight. Making commercials for ESPN was just a blast. Yeah. And when you're working on a brand like that, everyone wants to party, in the sense that everyone is ready to go above and beyond to make this thing better. When you're in production and in those final steps, it's kind of like, once you have to have a solid idea, right? But when you're making that idea come to life, it's like every little thing that makes it 2% better, 2% better, 1% better. And you get to the point where you're like, everyone did their part to make it 2% better. And now it's like 20, 30% better than you imagined it could be. And so when you're working on brands like that, where there's a lot of inspiration, a lot of brand capital or potential for brand capital, it's pretty fun because the way everyone just leans in. So that's a highlight. And because that's hard to beat, right? When you
sort of peak of the game, peak of the mountain there.
It's hard to beat in just the sense of bringing people along. You didn't have to do that much work to bring people along. Where now I feel like a lot of my work is bringing people along.
Really? Yeah. Sort of
making sure teams inspired and
sort of being an evangelist, I guess, and sort of get them to follow along with what you're doing. Yeah.
You have executive team alignment. You have helping all the other teams understand why this is important. Just hoping everyone's inspired to show up and make it 2% better.
Well, yeah, and you talked early on about being that translator, right? So you're always like, okay, who needs to be connected to this? Who needs to? You're always solving problems. I want to go to, you mentioned earlier that you went to USC, you picked back up at Belmont. I just want to know at ZipRecruiter, you're dealing with career builders and people looking for jobs and building their careers. But for you, when you look back, how important was your college experience to you and your career? Knowing that yours maybe was a little unconventional, right? But to anyone second guessing it these days, what advice or thoughts do you have?
I understand these days why people second guess it. It's such a financial investment and commitment. Mm-hmm. I think it was really powerful. I got to see, all of a sudden you're in a room with students at USC, especially with kids from all over the country. Yeah. And you're exposed to just different cultures, different everything. Coming from a small beach town, I think that exposure was pretty important. We grew up on the beach and it was east of the 405. It didn't exist. We were,
Isn't that funny the way?
And it's not that it didn't exist. And it's not that we were snobs or anything like that.
No, we were a little bit. That's okay.
The ocean was giving us everything we needed, you know? So there was a little bit of bubble. There's some bubbleness in that. And so for me, that was really powerful and important. And part of that was I was at USC without a car, which means I had to get in the city and be in the city. Which I think was also fortuitous. At the time, it seemed like it was I was not very excited about it.
But you were cursing. You were cursing it.
Yeah, it was it seemed like a hurdle. But when I look back at it, I was riding public transportation in LA, and before that train system was done, they were building that train system at that point in time. And I just learned so much of it being exposed. So I think it's like a hack. It's an exposure hack. In a way, if you go to the right school, And I do think you can go to a school that's culturally you're a fit and then other ones that you're not. So even though looking back, I'm like, USC wasn't that much culture of a pitch. I got so much out of it. I was also, you think about this, you're like, just all the expertise. Like the music school, these musicians were amazing. And it's next to the film school, which is in the epicenter of the film industry. And you have all these creative kids who are just like, just biting at the bit to just change the world with a film.
Yes.
You have the business school, which is just, it's a great business school. You have the law school. It's a great law school.
More cultural capital. What a
You're
great.
exposed to all these things. And so,
Yeah.
from like a community building, from a just awareness thing, I think it's valuable. I wouldn't dismiss it quickly. I totally understand now why it's not the right thing for everybody, but those those things help.
Yeah.
Just even exposure, even if you don't finish. I had my first job before I finished a degree. I had like 3 jobs before I finished a degree because I did it slowly at Belmont.
Yeah.
Right? And life had already kind of started. And if I look back, did I need to actually finish that degree? Maybe not, but maybe I wouldn't have got the ZipRecruiter job without that degree. Maybe they would have been like, nah.
That's right.
I definitely didn't lead with like I dropped out of USC to be in a band. That wasn't what I opened the interview with.
but that is a story though. I mean, that's a good line. Yeah, I think it's good. And I think probably it sounds like for you needed maybe to close that loop as well to say, you know what, did it, it's done. If I want to go back, now I still can.
I wanted the option to go back at the time.
And
I
options
haven't
are good.
used it. I probably won't at this point. But I also know you never know what can happen.
Careers are full of pivots, and we tell our kids all the time, we just want you to have options. We want you not to be forced into a corner, but to know that you're making a choice because that's the option you have.
Yeah.
How about other soft skills then for those that are maybe recently graduating from school, those seeking to transition into marketing, branding, visuals, and design like you? What do they need to know? What soft skills do they really need to have?
I don't want to. I'm just going to harp on curiosity because in that bucket, there's so much stuff. There's listening, right? To be curious, you have to be a great listener. And I think that's the biggest skill you could learn right now is active listening. I've cut you off a couple times. I'm still not very good at active listening, and I'm so working on it so hard.
But this is your opportunity to talk, so it's okay.
So my point is like I feel like active listening is like a lifelong journey. And in that, figuring out how to be empathetic of the other person. Right now we're a divided country. We need to understand each other. We need to create space to listen, or we'll stay divided. I think that can happen in the workplace. So many times different teams can become politicized, and it's like this team against that team. It could happen anywhere.
Yeah.
In any kind of workplace. And so listening is just such a great bridge for that. Life is so much fun when you learn about people. It's like
exactly.
Every moment becomes entertaining. So I think there's just so many things stacked under curiosity that are soft skills that help you with seeing the problems, solving the problems, which I think is really every job you're solving a problem.
Yes.
And the quicker you identify it, the better. The more you understand it, the better. So I would say, there's just so many things under curiosity. The courage to ask a dumb question in a meeting. Right? To me, that's curiosity. When I'm looking at my team and the person that's 2 years out of college on the team that's asking a question in the meeting, I know I have that so much more faith that I'm going to be able to set them off and give them the autonomy to kick ass on a project. Because I know they're curious and they're building context and they're going to ask questions. It might not always be the right question. And sometimes it's going to burn you. Sometimes someone in that room is going to judge you for asking a stupid question and whatever. But you're going to win so many more times than you are going to get burned.
Yes.
And that's courage. That's a courage thing. That's a wanting to know more than you're afraid of the being judged.
And good leadership will recognize that and go, okay, totally. I've got some curiosity in the room.
And there'll be times when you get judged for it.
I like the odds.
The wins are bigger than the losses. I don't even like thinking of things in wins and losses, but sometimes it's easier to communicate that way.
Yeah.
What you get out of it is so much more.
I love that.
Otherwise, you're sitting in the meeting, not understanding half the meeting.
And guess what? Oftentimes, if you're bold enough to ask the question, somebody will come up to you afterwards. It's happened to me because I'm often always the one like, hang on, I got a question. Yeah. And then people come up like, thank you so much. Like, I really wanted to ask that question. We were all looking at each other wondering. I'm like, well, somebody's got to raise their hand and be the one to put themselves out there and do it.
I bucket all these things under curious. Like when I'm looking at my team, I'm like, who's curious? Who's got a good work ethic? Who's building context?
Yeah.
Who's really trying to get a deep understanding? Who's willing to go like, oh, this is a low-hanging fruit and the priority right now. Let's get that. Who's willing to be strategic and smart? It was one thing to have a crazy work ethic and work hard. It's a whole different story to work smart and have a decent work ethic.
Yeah.
So I think curiosity and listening helps you work smart too.
Yeah. Well, let's try to, just got about 10 more minutes here. So there's a lot, I want to try to squeeze as much as I can in here if you got it. So, I want to, for you looking back on your last 5-10 years or so, as you look at the decisions you've made, what have you learned about yourself? You just gave some advice, but when you just kind of go introspective, you look at yourself, what do you think you've learned about yourself in this?
I think I have like a lot of self-awareness in some ways and then a lot less self-awareness in other ways. So I think that's been an interesting part of self-discovery. Like, I think maybe through the dyslexia, I have a lot of self-awareness about how I learn, and also observational skills, how other people learn, how systems work, understanding how complicated a system is. I'm been a little bit obsessed with system science. So that's like really strong. And in that way, I'm like, oh, I'm such a self-aware person. But you know what? I've also discovered like half the time I don't even really know how I feel, right?
Yeah.
Something. So I've had that awareness, which I've been really working on in the last 5 years of like, oh, and asking why do I feel this way? And I don't know if that's just because like I was so tunnel vision or just wanted to kick ass or, whatever. You could go into like therapy and all the reasons why. But I think just that's going to be the biggest difference that shapes what I do next and the transitions that I will continue to go through. I mean, we're all going to go through big career transitions. What's going on in the world right now is just, I don't think there's going to be any way not to have big career transitions.
Yeah.
And so when I think about that, I'm more aware of purpose and how purpose plays into what I want to do and don't want to do. Yeah, and I'm more aware of like what different team dynamics I thrive in and don't thrive in. So I built, before I think I had process awareness and context building awareness. And I really was good at understanding how things worked, right? Mm-hmm. And now I'm getting better at understanding like, oh, how I feel, maybe how other people feel, which makes me a better leader.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I was oblivious to that stuff before. I was just less aware.
Yeah. We talked about sort of the high moments, and what you just kind of explained what you've learned about yourself, which I think is really important, this idea of having a different perspective, looking at things with a different perspective. But are there any big lessons that you've learned along the way as well? I used to kind of refer to them as biggest mistakes, but
yeah,
lessons learned.
Mistakes. Just put the word down there, just failures.
Yeah, there we go.
It's funny. One of my brothers was asking me about this the other day, Vaughn, and he was like, you know what, it's funny, Rachel, because like you went to Nashville to be in a band and like really you could be like, that you totally failed. Like you weren't like, but it never feels like that.
You failed up though, I think.
Maybe you failed up, but like, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that. But I think so many of my failures, like in the moment, yeah, it's hard. Or in the moment I was like, oh, I had no expectations or my expectations were totally off. Or I failed, but maybe it's a strength in the fact that when I have these failings, like sure, I get derailed and think about things too long and churn on things and all this stuff. I'm not like just perfectly resilient.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that analysis and the bummer after the failure and the self-awareness, that is actually strength building. And for some people it might take a long time. A different failure might take longer than another to recover from. But I would say in general, I'm pretty good at turning those failures into lessons. So yeah, you could think of like moving to Nashville. I could tell that story as a failure to you today.
Right.
We just framed it up as falling up or whatever,
failing up.
Failing up. And there's so many like that, in the pandemic, I'd survived. I was at ZipRecruiter 6 years. I'd survived 4 different CMOs, I was doing great. And then, I was part of a layoff and,
that stings.
That can feel like a failure, you know? But I was ready for what was next too. I was like, okay, I had so many wins, if you want to call them wins, and failures that it was time. And in some way it's a blessing. It's like, oh yeah, time for the next set of problems to solve.
Yeah. I love that you said you were ready for what's next. So I think that is the big takeaway, that it sounds like you've continued to position yourself where you're always ready for what's next. Whatever is coming at you, you're ready for it. You're ready to see it, seize the opportunity, dig in with your curiosity. I don't want to glorify that too much though, Derek. For people who feel lost and feel like they're in the gray, I think, because I don't ever necessarily know what's next, right? I'm just like excited to see the problem. So I do think there's like a lot of gray area and like
If someone's like in a dump or a slump or like, it's okay, like be there. I definitely been there.
Yeah.
You know, I've had projects where I fail, you know, clients that I've failed where I just like could not solve the problem. There's not a lot of them, right? And it wasn't like I didn't try really hard, and it wasn't like I didn't learn something from it. It wasn't like they didn't learn something from that. But yeah, you got to swing at pitches. If you don't swing at any pitches, you're not going to hit any balls.
That's right.
So when you miss, when I miss, I'm like, yeah, of course we missed. Like we were swinging at pitches. Like you're gonna miss. You know, I got in a fender bender in front of my parents' chiropractor's office once, and I was like a teenager, right?
Yeah.
Someone rear-ended me on BCH there, right at Thalia, and the chiropractor. I was a little shook up.
Yeah.
Right? He could tell. He brought me into his office, sat me down, and he just goes, "Rachel, we're all moving around. It's okay. We're bound to bump into each other." I was just like, oh yeah. You know, like I would bet, what are you going to do? Not move and just do nothing?
Yeah. Thank you for that wisdom.
Yeah.
I love it.
I hadn't thought about that in a long time. I don't even know how that come up, but.
That's good. Well,
I took too many sports metaphors. I was like, I need a different one.
Yeah. Sports metaphors are always good though, I think. Right. Well, let's wrap it up with a few.
I'm going to give you another failure, Derek.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
On this podcast, my brother told me I yell too much on conference calls.
You yell too much?
And so I was trying not to like raise my voice.
Yeah.
Right? And I've totally probably been the last 30 minutes with an elevated raised voice and not in like slight whatever. So if he goes back and watches this, he's going to be like, you didn't do it. Yeah. We're failing all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Failing and learning and moving forward and bumping into each other. I love it. Well, let's end up with these. But, you know, for someone who's early in their career journey, maybe somebody who's looking to, you know, to put a career together like yours, give me 3 things that you want them to know, remember, or focus on. 3 things that you want to leave people with.
Be curious, and remember that being curious has a lot of depth. You have to have courage. You have to ask questions: who, what, when, where, why. Build context. Mm-hmm. There's so many layers to that. It's not just like, it's not just the spirit of discovery. It's actually quite a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Being open. I think that's a strength that's brought me a lot of fortunes. Being open to this thing that I wasn't expecting to happen. And like, what can I make of this thing? I'd say those are probably the two biggest things. It would sound better if I had a third, but I
was going to say, I'm looking for 3. Things always work good in 3s. I know you got one.
Yeah. Try to have some fun.
Yes, I love that.
Because you are more resilient when you're having fun.
Okay. I love that you've done such a good job of tying those together. Like you layer on like fun and resiliency. Like you put them all together. It's so good. There's a lot of good advice in here. Well, give me an idea. What's next on the horizon for you, Rachel? What are you working on these days? What do we need to look for coming out from you?
I'm having a lot of fun consulting with a couple companies that are going to market. So I'm excited to see how those are. And I'm digging deep into like all the my volunteer work, all the natural resources in North County, San Diego. So I'm like really enjoying learning more about that and, you know, managing the depression that comes along with those challenges.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. I'm going to put the best place for people to find you. I'd imagine LinkedIn, anywhere else, LinkedIn. Right? Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The last few minutes here are for you. I call this sort of an open mic moment. I want to give you an opportunity for what I call shout outs or call outs. Maybe you want to give some recommendations, books, I don't know, movies, apologies.
You know what? I will give it. That's a great ask.
Okay.
I'm reading The Power of Giving Away Power right now.
Good one.
And I'm going to forget the author's name. It's the second time I've read it. I read it 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And it was, if anyone wants to be a leader in strategic stuff, it's a great read about just bursting the load. You know, they talk about fundraising. It's like, if you're fundraising, are you going to go after the deer, or are you going to go catch a bunch of little fish? It's 2 very different strategies, and
right.
There's many layers to this. But I think why I'm reading it again, or I decided to read it again, is I think we have so many stories in our culture that are about like the individual being the champion, when really there are a bunch of other successes that are actually just so much more about teamwork. And so when you think about, we think so much of our stuff is like the pyramid structure, you know, in an org, anything.
Yep.
And just to think about the power that can come from a constellation structure. And I think so much of our folklore, so much of our storytelling, you talk about the hero's journey, you know, which Star Wars is a classic thing of that. It's like Luke Skywalker's hero journey. But when you think of the cast of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to, I've been curious on like, how can we tell constellation stories and have them be as powerful as like the hero's journey story, which is very much a pyramid story. So I'm reading the book again, hoping to have a breakthrough in that. But reading is great. I also just read This Is Your Brain on Sports, which was pretty fun. And so I just encourage anyone to just read books about the problems you're interested in solving that are adjacent or that, because when you're reading and doing it at the same time, it's just like extra.
Yeah.
Extra insights.
Yeah, that's a good point. Those are great. I'll find those, put those links in there. And is the constellation approach, is that in the book, or
he does talk about that in the book.
Yeah, that's really great. No, I like that approach too. All right. Well, who knows? I was thinking all I could imagine was you writing a book on sort of that constellation theory. And
No, it's his.
Okay.
It's his.
All right. Well, Rachel, thank you so much. Thanks for all the stories, the insights. I think there's a lot of wisdom in here to be pulled for people who are just navigating through their own careers. So thank you for making time for us. And we'll leave it there.
Yeah, it's fun. Thanks for having me.
You bet. I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Hey, everyone. Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what you heard, be sure to check back weekly, subscribe to the show. And if you want to be featured on the show, come hit us up at theunderswell.com. We'd love to hear from you.